My name is Jack Turner, and 3 months ago I thought I had the perfect life. Turns out, I was living in a house of cards built on lies, Instagram filters, and my wife's complete inability to keep her legs closed around anyone but me. I should have known something was wrong when Olivia started caring more about her phone than our conversations. Hell, I should have known when she started having girls' nights that lasted until 3 in the morning and came home smelling like expensive cologne that definitely wasn't mine. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me paint you the picture of my so-called perfect life in Austin, Texas, where the houses are big, the gossip is bigger, and everyone pretends their marriage is Instagram-worthy while secretly planning their spouse's demise. I'm 34, work as a financial analyst for a mid-sized investment firm downtown, and make decent money. Not rich, but comfortable enough to afford our 3-bedroom house in Cedar Park, with the granite countertops and the HOA that sends passive-aggressive letters if your grass is half an inch too long. Olivia, my wife of 5 years, is 31 and beautiful in that polished, high-maintenance way that requires 2 hours of preparation just to go to the grocery store. She's got blonde hair that costs more to maintain than my car payment, blue eyes that photograph well for her Instagram feed, and a smile that could sell ice to Eskimos. Too bad that smile had been getting rarer around our house and more frequent around other people's husbands. She calls herself a lifestyle influencer, which apparently means she takes pictures of her breakfast and gives unsolicited advice about marriage to her 12,000 followers. The irony of that last part wasn't lost on me, even before I found out she was screwing Miles Garrison behind my back. Miles. Even his name sounds like a pretentious asshole, doesn't it? Miles Garrison, 36 years old, local real estate mogul who drives a Range Rover and wears polo shirts that probably cost more than most people's rent. He's got that artificially white smile and the kind of confidence that comes from never being told no in his entire privileged life. The first time I met Miles was at a neighborhood barbecue last summer. He walked up to me while I was manning the grill, looked at my beer and said, "You know, you should really try craft beer. Budweiser is for people who don't know any better." I should have thrown my burger spatula at his perfectly groomed head right then and there. Instead, I smiled and said, "You know what's great about Budweiser? It doesn't come with a side of pretentious bullshit." Olivia kicked me under the table later and told me I was being rude. Apparently, Miles was important in the neighborhood and had connections that could be useful for her influencer career. That should have been red flag number 1. But I was still operating under the delusion that my wife loved me more than she loved social media fame and the attention of rich assholes in expensive cars. The real wake-up call came 3 months ago, on a Tuesday night in January. I was working late, trying to finish a quarterly report, when I decided to surprise Olivia by coming home early with her favorite Thai food from that place on South Lamar. I walked into our house at 8:30, calling out her name, expecting to find her in the living room watching one of those reality shows where people pretend to love each other for money. Instead, I heard voices coming from the kitchen, Olivia's voice, and another voice I recognized as belonging to her friend Tessa. "I still can't believe you're actually doing this," Tessa was saying. "I mean, Jack's a good guy. He doesn't deserve this." "Jack is boring," Olivia replied, and I felt something cold settle in my stomach. When's the last time he surprised me with anything? When's the last time he made me feel alive? Miles makes me feel like I'm actually living, not just existing. I stood in the hallway, holding bags of pad thai and spring rolls, listening to my wife explain to her friend why our marriage was apparently over. "But what if he finds out?" Tessa asked. "He won't," Olivia said with the kind of confidence that made me want to walk in there and prove her wrong immediately. "Jack's too trusting, too focused on his work. He barely notices what I do during the day anyway." That was the moment I realized I'd been sleepwalking through my own life, and that was also the moment I decided to wake up and pay attention. I quietly set the food on the hall table, backed out of the house, and sat in my car for 20 minutes, trying to process what I'd just heard. When I finally went back inside, Tessa was gone, and Olivia was in the living room, scrolling through her phone like nothing had happened. "Hey, babe," she said without looking up. "How was work?" "Enlightening," I said, and she still didn't look up from her screen. That night, I started paying attention, really paying attention, and what I saw made me realize that I'd been married to a stranger who happened to share my last name and my bed, but definitely not my values or my respect. Over the next few weeks, I became a detective in my own home. Not because I enjoyed it, but because I needed to know exactly how deep this betrayal went before I decided what to do about it. Olivia's patterns became obvious once I started looking. Every Tuesday and Thursday, she had yoga class that ran from 7 to 10 p.m. Funny thing about yoga classes, they usually don't last 3 hours, and they definitely don't require you to shower and change clothes before you leave the house. Her phone, which used to sit casually on counters and tables, was now permanently attached to her hand or hidden in her purse. She'd gotten a new car last month, nothing fancy, just a Honda Civic, but she was suddenly very particular about who could borrow it or even sit in it. "I just like keeping it clean," she explained when I asked why she freaked out when I moved some papers from the passenger seat. But the real smoking gun came in the form of her credit card statements, which I still had access to since we shared a joint account for household expenses. Olivia had been using that card for some interesting purchases: lingerie from Victoria's Secret, dinners at expensive restaurants on nights when she claimed to be eating salad at home, and hotel charges for places that definitely weren't in Austin. The hotel charges were what finally pushed me to hire a private investigator. Pete Rodriguez, my best friend from college, and the only person I trusted with this mess, recommended a guy named David Chen, who specialized in marital investigations. Chen was a former police detective who'd gone private after getting tired of dealing with department politics. He was thorough, discreet, and expensive, but Pete assured me he was worth every penny. "You sure you want to go down this road?" Pete asked when I called him to get Chen's number. "Sometimes ignorance really is bliss, man." "Ignorance is what got me into this situation," I replied. "I'd rather know the truth and deal with it than keep living a lie." Chen and I met at a coffee shop downtown on a Saturday morning while Olivia was at her book club, which, according to her credit card statement, was actually a brunch at the Four Seasons with someone who wasn't me. "What exactly do you want to know?" Chen asked after I'd explained the situation. "Everything," I said. "How long it's been going on, where they meet, if there are others, what she's telling people about our marriage. I want documentation of everything." "Documentation costs extra," Chen said. "Photos, video, audio recordings where legally permissible. You looking at divorce?" "I'm looking at options," I said, "but I want to make sure I have all the facts before I make any decisions." Chen nodded. "Smart. Most people wait until they're emotional basket cases before they call me. Makes my job harder and their outcomes worse. Give me 2 weeks." He was right about the emotional part. Over those 2 weeks, I felt like I was losing my mind. I'd wake up next to Olivia, watch her get ready for her day of lying and cheating, and have to pretend everything was normal. I'd come home from work and listen to her talk about her yoga classes and book clubs and girls' nights, knowing that every word out of her mouth was bullshit. The hardest part was that she seemed happier than she'd been in months. She was more energetic, more affectionate, more interested in closeness, all because she was getting her emotional and physical needs met by someone else, while using me as her financial and domestic security blanket. Chen called me on a Thursday morning, exactly 2 weeks after our coffee shop meeting. "We need to talk," he said, "in person. Can you meet me at the same place in an hour?" I told my boss I had a dentist appointment and drove downtown with my stomach churning. Chen was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table with a manila folder in front of him. "How bad is it?" I asked as I sat down. "Pretty bad," Chen said, opening the folder. "But also pretty well documented. Your wife has been having an affair with Miles Garrison for approximately 4 months. They meet twice a week, usually at the Marriott on South Austin, sometimes at his house when his wife is out of town. She's also been telling people that your marriage is over and you're planning to divorce, which explains why she's been so open about the relationship. He slid a series of photographs across the table. Olivia and Miles entering the hotel together. Olivia and Miles kissing in the parking lot. Olivia and Miles having dinner at restaurants I couldn't afford. There's more, Chen said. She's been using your joint credit card to pay for hotels, dinners, and gifts for him. She's also been telling her friends that she's planning to leave you once she figures out how to get the house and half your assets. I stared at the photos, feeling a strange combination of vindication and nausea. What about his wife? Does she know? Sarah Garrison? No idea. That wasn't part of your investigation. But I can tell you that Miles has done this before. I've worked 3 other cases involving him in the past 2 years. Guy's a serial cheater. Chen closed the folder and slid it across to me. Everything's in there. Photos, timeline, credit card records, witness statements from hotel staff. Should be more than enough for your lawyer. I paid Chen his fee and drove home with the folder on the passenger seat, feeling like I was carrying a bomb that was about to explode my entire life. But here's the thing about bombs. Sometimes you're the one who gets to decide when and how they go off. I didn't confront Olivia immediately. Instead, I spent 3 days planning my approach like a military operation. I consulted with a divorce attorney, moved money from our joint accounts into a personal account, and made copies of every important document in our house. I also did something that felt petty but necessary. I changed the passwords on all our shared accounts and set up security cameras around the house. The confrontation happened on a Sunday evening. Olivia had just returned from what she claimed was a weekend girls' trip to San Antonio, but which I knew from Chen's surveillance was actually a romantic getaway with Miles at a bed and breakfast in Fredericksburg. She walked into the house glowing and relaxed, carrying a bag from a boutique that specialized in expensive lingerie. Not the kind of thing you typically buy on a girls' trip, unless your girls' trip includes a lot more than girl time. How was San Antonio? I asked from the kitchen, where I was preparing what I'd already decided would be our last dinner together as a married couple. Amazing, she said, not even bothering to look at me as she scrolled through her phone. The girls and I had such a good time. We went to the Riverwalk, did some shopping, had great food. Which hotel did you stay at? I asked casually. The Marriott, she said without thinking, then caught herself. I mean, the Marriott on the Riverwalk, downtown. Except, according to Chen's report, she'd never been to San Antonio at all. She'd spent the weekend 40 miles away in Fredericksburg, at a place called the Magnolia House, in a room registered under Miles Garrison's name. That's funny, I said, walking into the living room with the manila folder in my hands. Because according to this, you spent the weekend in Fredericksburg, at the Magnolia House, with Miles Garrison. Olivia's face went through a series of expressions in about 3 seconds: confusion, recognition, panic, and then something I'd never seen before: cold calculation. I don't know what you're talking about, she said. I opened the folder and spread the photographs across the coffee table like playing cards. Olivia and Miles checking into the bed and breakfast. Olivia and Miles holding hands as they walked through the town square. Olivia and Miles kissing on the front porch of their room. These were taken yesterday, I said, while you were supposedly in San Antonio with the girls. Olivia stared at the photos for a long moment, then looked up at me with an expression I couldn't read. How long have you known? She asked. Long enough, I said. Long enough to hire a private investigator. Long enough to document 4 months of lies. Long enough to move our money and talk to a lawyer. Something shifted in her face then, and for a moment I thought she might apologize, might try to explain or make excuses or beg for forgiveness. Instead, she did something that surprised me. She laughed. You hired a private investigator? she said, shaking her head. God, Jack, that's so pathetic. Even when you're trying to catch me cheating, you can't do it yourself. You have to pay someone else to do the work. I wanted documentation, I said. For the divorce. Good, she said, standing up and walking toward the kitchen. Because I want a divorce too. I've wanted one for months. I was just trying to figure out the best way to get what I deserve from this marriage. I followed her into the kitchen, where she was pouring herself a glass of wine like we were discussing weekend plans instead of the end of our marriage. What you deserve, I said. You mean like half of everything I've worked for while you've been playing house with a married man? I mean like compensation for 5 years of being married to the most boring man in Texas, she said, taking a sip of wine. Do you have any idea what it's like being married to someone who thinks excitement is trying a new restaurant? Someone whose idea of romance is bringing home takeout on a Tuesday night? I brought home takeout that night because I thought you'd appreciate the surprise, I said. Instead, I got to listen to you tell Tessa how boring I am and how alive Miles makes you feel. Her eyes widened slightly. You were listening? I was standing in the hallway with your favorite Thai food, planning to surprise you, I said. Instead, I got surprised by finding out my wife thinks I'm a boring loser who doesn't deserve honesty or respect. You don't deserve either of those things, she said, and her voice was cold now. You're a small, petty man with a small, petty life. Miles is successful. He's exciting. He makes me feel like I matter. Miles is married, I said, and according to my investigator, you're not his first affair. You're just the latest in a long line of women who think they're special enough to make him leave his wife. He's going to leave Sarah, Olivia said, but I could hear the uncertainty in her voice. Is he? I said. Because Sarah Garrison doesn't know about you yet, but she's about to. Olivia set down her wine glass hard enough that some of it sloshed onto the counter. You wouldn't. I already did, I lied smoothly. I sent her copies of all the photos this morning, along with the hotel receipts and the timeline. She should be getting them right about now. Olivia's face went white. Jack, you can't... I can't what? Tell the truth? Expose your affair? Ruin your perfect little fantasy? I shook my head. You made your choices, Olivia. Now you get to live with the consequences. She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her trying to figure out if I was bluffing. I wasn't. I hadn't sent anything to Sarah Garrison yet, but I was definitely planning to. Fine, she said finally. You want to play hardball? Let's play hardball. I want half of everything. The house, your retirement account, your savings, everything. You can want whatever you like, I said, but adultery affects asset division in Texas, especially when the adulterous spouse has been using marital funds to support their affair. I could see the moment she realized I wasn't the same pushover she'd been married to for 5 years. The moment she understood that I'd been planning this confrontation just as carefully as she'd been planning her affair. I underestimated you, she said quietly. Yes, I said. You did. Now pack a bag. You can stay at Tessa's place, or Miles's place, or wherever you want. But you're not staying here tonight. She started to argue, then seemed to think better of it. Instead, she went upstairs and packed a suitcase while I sat in the living room, looking at the photographs of my wife's betrayal and planning my next move. Because this confrontation was just the beginning, I had bigger plans for Olivia and Miles, plans that would make sure everyone in our social circle knew exactly what kind of people they really were. Olivia moved in with Tessa temporarily, which lasted exactly 3 days before she moved in with Miles. Apparently, Tessa had some moral qualms about harboring a woman who was openly destroying 2 marriages simultaneously. Who knew Tessa had a conscience? But Miles? Miles was thrilled to have Olivia playing house with him while his wife Sarah was conveniently out of town visiting her sister in Dallas. What he didn't know was that I'd been documenting every move they made, building a case that would destroy both of their reputations in our tight-knit community. See, the thing about Austin's suburban social scene is that it runs on gossip Instagram posts, and the illusion that everyone's life is perfect. Olivia had built her entire identity around being the perfect wife with the perfect marriage, sharing inspirational quotes about love and commitment while screwing someone else's husband behind closed doors. I decided it was time for some truth in advertising. It started small. I created a fake Instagram account and began commenting on Olivia's posts with innocent-seeming questions. When she posted a photo of herself at a restaurant with the caption, "Date night with my love," I commented, "Cute. Is that the Marriott restaurant? Jack must love that place. You guys go there so often." She deleted the comment within minutes, but not before several of her followers had seen it and started asking questions of their own. Then I escalated. I'd kept copies of all the credit card statements showing Olivia's hotel charges, restaurant visits, and shopping trips. I also had Chen's photographs, time-stamped and dated, showing exactly when and where Olivia had been with Miles. So when she posted a photo from what she claimed was a girls' spa day, I was ready. I created a simple website. Nothing fancy, just a timeline of Olivia's affair with photos and receipts. I called it The Truth About Olivia Turner and included a detailed breakdown of how she'd used our joint credit card to fund her relationship with Miles while lying to me and everyone else about where she was and what she was doing. Then I shared the link in the comments of every single one of her Instagram posts. The response was immediate and brutal. Within hours, Olivia's phone was buzzing constantly with calls and texts from friends, family, and followers who'd seen the website. Her carefully curated image as a lifestyle guru and marriage expert was crumbling in real time. She called me at work, screaming. "Take it down," she demanded. "Take that website down right now." "Why?" I asked innocently. "It's all true. Every photo, every receipt, every timeline entry. I thought you believed in honesty and authenticity. Isn't that what you're always posting about?" "This is harassment," she said. "I'm calling my lawyer." "Good luck with that," I said. "Everything on that site is documented fact. Truth is an absolute defense against defamation claims." She hung up on me, but the damage was done. By the end of the day, Olivia had lost over 2,000 Instagram followers and 3 of her sponsorship deals. Apparently, companies that sell products to married women don't want to be associated with adultery and deception. But I wasn't done. Miles had his own social media presence, mostly LinkedIn posts about his real estate success and Facebook photos of his luxury lifestyle. He was particularly proud of his image as a successful family man and community leader. He served on the board of 2 local charities and was always posting about his commitment to family values and community integrity. I decided to test that commitment. I printed out several of Chen's photos, the clearest ones of Miles and Olivia together, and mailed them anonymously to the boards of both charities Miles served on, along with a note explaining that this was their family values board member, engaging in an affair with a married woman while his own wife was out of town. I also sent copies to Sarah Garrison, along with a detailed letter explaining everything I knew about her husband's affair and offering to provide additional documentation if she needed it for her own divorce proceedings. The results exceeded my expectations. Miles was quietly asked to resign from both charity boards within a week. His real estate business, which relied heavily on referrals from the same social circles where his affair was now public knowledge, began losing clients. And Sarah Garrison filed for divorce, taking half his assets and his reputation with her. But the best part was watching Olivia realize that her knight in shining armor was actually just another cheating husband with more debts than assets. She showed up at my house on a Thursday evening, looking like she hadn't slept in days. "You've destroyed everything," she said when I opened the door. "I documented everything," I corrected. "You destroyed it. I just made sure people knew the truth about what you'd done." "Miles is broke," she said. "His wife took everything. His business is failing. He can't afford to support me." "That's not my problem," I said. "You chose him over me. Now you get to live with that choice." "I made a mistake," she said, and for the first time since this whole mess started, She sounded genuinely remorseful. I was stupid and selfish and I hurt you. But this has gone far enough. Can't we just get divorced quietly and move on? I looked at her standing on my doorstep, the woman I'd loved and trusted and built a life with, and felt absolutely nothing. No anger, no sadness, no regret. Just a cold, empty space where my feelings for her used to be. No, I said, we can't. Because you didn't just cheat on me, Olivia. You humiliated me. You made me look like a fool to our friends and family. You used my money to fund your affair and then bragged to your friends about how stupid and boring I was. I never meant— Yes, you did, I interrupted. You meant every bit of it. The only thing you didn't mean to do was get caught. I started to close the door, then paused. Oh, and Olivia? Your friend Rachel has been sending me screenshots of your group chat messages, the ones where you and your friends have been making jokes about me for months. Apparently, she feels guilty about keeping your secrets. Olivia's face went pale. What group chat messages? I smiled. The ones where you called me a pathetic loser and said Miles was twice the man Jack will ever be. Those messages. Rachel thought I should see them before the divorce proceedings start. I closed the door and watched through the peephole as Olivia stood on my porch for several minutes, probably realizing that her circle of friends was smaller than she'd thought. The next phase of my plan was going to be even better. 3 weeks later, Olivia and Miles were both broke, socially ostracized, and facing divorce proceedings that would leave them with almost nothing. But I still wasn't satisfied. They'd humiliated me, cost me 5 years of my life, and made me question my own judgment and worth. A few ruined reputations and financial setbacks didn't feel like enough. I wanted them to understand exactly what it felt like to have your life destroyed by someone you trusted. The opportunity came when I learned that Miles was trying to salvage his real estate business by hosting an open house event for a luxury property he was desperately trying to sell. It was going to be a big community event, with local media coverage and potential investors. Miles was betting everything on this one sale to keep his business afloat. I decided to attend. The open house was on a Saturday afternoon at a sprawling mansion in Westlake Hills. Miles had pulled out all the stops: catered food, live music, professional photography, and invitations to everyone who mattered in Austin's real estate and social scene. He was trying to rebuild his reputation and his business with one impressive event. I arrived early, wearing my best suit and carrying a leather portfolio that made me look like a serious potential buyer. Miles greeted me at the door with a fake smile and a handshake that lasted about half a second too long. "Jack," he said, clearly surprised to see me. "I didn't expect you to be interested in real estate right now." "Divorce settlement," I said with a shrug. "Turns out adultery laws in Texas are pretty favorable to the faithful spouse. I'm looking at some investment opportunities." I could see him trying to figure out if I was telling the truth or just there to cause trouble. The uncertainty in his eyes was delicious. I spent the first hour mingling with other guests, making small talk about the property and the market, playing the role of a legitimate buyer. But I was also doing reconnaissance, figuring out the layout of the house, and identifying the key people I needed to reach. Olivia arrived around 2 o'clock, playing the role of Miles's girlfriend and business partner. She was dressed in an expensive outfit that she probably couldn't afford, trying to project success and confidence. But I could see the strain around her eyes and the way she kept checking her phone obsessively. The moment I'd been waiting for came when Miles gathered everyone in the main living room for his sales presentation. He stood in front of the massive stone fireplace, holding a microphone and talking about the property's features, the neighborhood's amenities, and the investment potential of Austin's luxury real estate market. "This house represents everything that makes Austin special," he said, gesturing toward the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the hills. "It's a place where families can build lasting memories, where success and happiness come together in perfect harmony." That's when I stood up. "Speaking of families and harmony," I said loudly enough for everyone to hear, I have a question about disclosure requirements. Miles's smile faltered slightly. Disclosure requirements? Yes, I said, pulling a folder from my portfolio. Texas law requires real estate agents to disclose any material facts that might affect a buyer's decision. I'm wondering if you've disclosed to potential buyers that you're currently facing multiple lawsuits related to fraudulent business practices. The room went silent. Miles's face went white. I don't know what you're talking about, he said. Really? I said, opening the folder and pulling out a stack of papers. Because I have copies of 3 separate lawsuits filed against Garrison Real Estate in the past month. Breach of contract, misrepresentation of property values, and failure to disclose material defects in previous sales. I'd spent 2 weeks researching Miles's business practices and talking to his former clients. It turned out that his financial desperation had led him to cut corners and make promises he couldn't keep. The lawsuits were real, and they were devastating to what was left of his reputation. Those are frivolous lawsuits filed by disgruntled clients, Miles said, but his voice was shaking now. Are they? I said, walking closer to the front of the room. Because I also have documentation showing that you've been using client escrow funds to pay personal expenses, including hotel rooms for extramarital affairs. The crowd was murmuring now, and I could see several people pulling out their phones to record what was happening. This is harassment, Olivia said, stepping forward. Jack, stop this right now. Oh, I'm just getting started, I said, turning to face her. Since we're talking about disclosure, maybe you should tell everyone here about your qualifications as Miles's business partner, like how you funded your relationship with him using credit cards in your husband's name, or how you've been giving marriage advice on social media while destroying 2 marriages simultaneously. I pulled out my phone and opened the screenshots that Rachel had sent me, the group chat messages where Olivia had bragged about manipulating me and mocked my appearance, my job, and my personality to her friends. Here's a fun one, I said, reading from my phone. Quote, Jack is so pathetic, he actually believes I'm at yoga class twice a week. I could tell him I was joining the circus and he'd probably believe that too. End quote. The room was buzzing now, with people whispering and pointing. Several guests were already heading for the door, clearly wanting no part of this drama. Or this one, I continued. Quote, Miles says Jack is the most boring man he's ever met, and he can't understand how I stayed married to him for 5 years without dying of boredom. End quote. Miles grabbed the microphone from me. That's enough, he said. This is a private business event, and I'm asking you to leave. Actually, I said, this is a public event that you advertised in the newspaper and on social media, and everything I've said here is documented fact. But don't worry, I'm almost done. I turned to face the remaining crowd, most of whom were staring at me like I was either completely insane or the most entertaining thing they'd seen in years. Ladies and gentlemen, I said, I want you to meet Miles Garrison and Olivia Turner. Miles is a real estate agent who's facing multiple lawsuits for fraud and who uses client funds to pay for affairs with married women. Olivia is a lifestyle influencer who gives marriage advice while cheating on her husband and using his credit cards to fund her adultery. I paused for effect. If you're looking for someone to help you buy a house or improve your marriage, I'd suggest looking elsewhere. The silence that followed was broken by the sound of people gathering their things and heading for the exits. Within 10 minutes, the open house was empty, except for Miles, Olivia, me, and the catering staff. Miles was standing by the fireplace, staring at the floor. Olivia was crying, not the pretty, delicate tears she used for social media photos, but ugly, desperate sobs that made her makeup run down her cheeks. Are you happy now? She asked me. You've destroyed both of us. Are you satisfied? I looked at her, really looked at her, and realized that I was satisfied. Not happy, exactly, but satisfied in a way that felt like justice. Yes, I said, I am. You two spent months making me feel like a fool, like I was worthless and boring and deserved to be betrayed. Now you know exactly how that feels. I walked toward the door, then turned back one more time. Oh, and Miles? Good luck selling this house. I hear the real estate market is tough when nobody trusts you. I left them standing in that empty mansion, surrounded by the ruins of their reputations and their futures, and drove home to my quiet house, where I could finally start rebuilding my life without lies, without betrayal, and without people who saw my trust as weakness. 6 months later, Miles's real estate business had collapsed completely, and he'd moved back in with his parents in Dallas. Olivia had lost her influencer status, her friends, and her financial security. She was working at a department store in San Antonio, living in a studio apartment, and posting inspirational quotes about starting over to her remaining 300 Instagram followers. As for me, I got a promotion at work, bought a smaller house closer to downtown, and started dating a woman named Jennifer who thinks honesty is attractive and loyalty is non-negotiable. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. Sometimes it's just making sure the truth comes out and letting people face the natural consequences of their choices. And sometimes, when you're really lucky, you get to watch it all happen from the front row.